So after extensive PTR testing and the fact that I actually read the patch notes from today, I'm about to make a tier list from everything that I have experienced. Here are the caveats. If I make a tier list ranking every single spec, there are a few things that you need to know. Number one, things are subject to change. Number two, if your spec is in the soup category or C tier or B tier, it does not mean that it's unplayable. Specifically, this list is aimed at Mythic Plus, and specifically, it is aimed for high Mythic Plus. But I want to clarify, and this is where it gets unique. As I rank the specs, there are some specs that do very, very well at a plus 20 key level, but there are some specs that don't do so well at that level. The same deal, there are some specs that do very, very good at a plus 12, but don't do so good in other categories. And so actually, when I rank the specs, I will clarify that there are some specs in the game that you should invite to your plus 12 and your plus 15, but maybe not to your plus 20. Let's be real, folks. If you're doing a plus 20, you probably don't need this list anyways. Why do we watch meta tier lists? It's because we want to know what to play. And the reason is because this tier list and other tier lists like it directly affect community perception. Your community perception of your spec is what determines whether or not you sit in Dornegal or whether or not you actually get to do keys next season. Because there's nothing worse than wanting to do M+, logging in, sitting in Dornegal, and being like, wow, I'm a Fury Warrior. Oh, spoiler alert, sorry. I want to do some keys, and just having to sit there and not getting invites. That was a spoiler, but oh well, here we go. We'll get there. So right away, we're going to start with tanks. Before I actually start, I just want to clarify, I'm going to learn how to make YouTube timestamps, and there will be timestamps. If you don't care about the tanks, skip ahead. I will do tanks, then healers, then DPS. DPS are going to be at the end. Tanks and healers are going to be first, okay? So, tanking. Here's my jam. I've tested every tank. Here we go. We're going to start bottom up. We're going to go bottom up, okay? There were tier notes today. There were some buffs. There were some nerfs. The very first thing is the spec that got buffed, but is still bad. For tanks, this spec is soup. Honestly, I would actually put this so far down here. Technically, it is playable, but there is no reason to play it. There is actually no reason. We are starting off with a Blood Death Knight. This brings effectively nothing to your team. It is relatively good at a plus 12 level. I'm not going to lie. It's relatively good, except that it still has fundamental issues. Number one, its damage is not that much higher than the other tank, which provides no actual offensive group buff. This doesn't provide a group buff. AMZ is not a reliable cooldown in keys whatsoever, but relatively speaking, Blood DK, it has single grips, but no a bomb limb. It can do one thing, which is in Priory, it can AMS the second boss mechanic. But aside from that, there really just aren't any niches of Blood DK this season. There's no key where you just say, oh my, I really wish I had a Blood DK. There's pretty much no instance where that happens, and there are several instances in these keys, especially Gambit, which we just tested behind us. There are specific instances where there are some groups and some packs where Blood DK specifically struggles. So you will invite this tank, and oftentimes they will die, and they might struggle. And even if they don't die and they play extremely well, let's take it now, you play Blood DK very, very good. The question is why? The question is why, to be honest. It's just not worth playing. It doesn't do more damage than a prop pally. It doesn't bring a group buff. It doesn't bring anything of real value to the group. So that's why this is down here. Can you play it? Yes. Can it live? Yes. Will it be able to do up to technically the highest key level? You know, give or take one or two? Yes. But there's just, honestly, I think that Blood DKs are going to have a really hard time queuing this season, and therefore it is lowest on the list. Next up, the next tank. This one is near and dear to my heart. This is sad. But the tier notes today did not impress me. Unfortunately, Guardian Druid is just above Blood DK. It's C. Now, before today, it was a solid B tier tank. Before today, it was a genuinely solid, maybe even low A tier. Honestly, maybe even like just, it was very tanky. It still had its niche of just being incredibly durable. I love Guardian Druid. I have tested Guardian Druid extensively. I have played it in so many PTR keys. both at the regular 12 level for PTR, but also in most 15s, in every single 15, except for Halls of Atonement today and Gambit and Streets. I haven't played those on 15 on Guardian. This tank is tanky. It can live, but it's just in a little bit of a rough spot. Let me explain why this is going to be considered just above Blood DK. The one thing you have going for you on top of Blood DK is the fact that you provide Mark of the Wild. That's pretty much it. Actually, it's honestly, that's it. What does Guardian Druid provide to the group? It's very sturdy, it's very tanky, and even at any key level, Guardian Druid is probably the least likely tank to die because it isn't technical to play. The current build that most Guardian Druid builds are playing, you most likely won't perish. That is actually a huge benefit to being a tank. Like, if you're a tank at a plus 15, you don't need to min-max. You don't need to be playing the absolute perfect. You don't need to be playing the meta tank. You just need to not die. So Guardian Druid has that niche of just being like, hey, look, if you should you invite a Guardian Druid to your plus 15, the reality is they probably won't die. I hear some talk in the Guardian Druid Discord of maybe swapping to Druid of the Claw for keys. You're much more likely to die as Druid of the Claw because it's harder to play than a Loon's Chosen. Rather than rank them individually on hero talents, by the way, I think it's important to realize I will rank it as spec as a whole, and I will talk about whether both hero talents are possible. Right now, for Druid, you might play Druid of the Claw. The main issue with Druid is that your damage is significantly lower. I love Guardian. I like min-maxing the spec. I cannot, for the life of me, touch my other tanks on damage. I actually tried. I really tried. I was like, maybe in like, if I just do Dawnbreaker and I try to do like good single target, if I do like smaller pulls. Okay, what if I do bigger pulls in Arakara? It doesn't matter. I cannot get anywhere close to my other tanks. Every single other tank is doing more damage than Guardian right now, except Blood DK if you count group buffs. If you don't factor in Mark of the Wild, then actually Druid tank does less damage than even a Blood DK. So the reality is that Druid tank goes down here. Is it tanky? Yes, that's the one thing it has going for it, because the tank that I'm going to rank above this, which is next, is going to be Prot Pally, okay? Prot Pally is next. Prot Pally gets ranked solid B tier, okay? Solid B tier here. Prot Pally has a niche right now. There is a very specific thing that Prot Pally does that other tanks cannot do, because if you read the notes today and you thought it was nerfed, it is actually buffed. The 4 set is currently uncapped. Whether or not it will stay like that is a good question. But if you take a look, I believe I was just doing this right after a key. If you you can take a look at the overall meters behind you. That's Prot Pally. That was a relatively clean key, only 3 deaths. All 3 deaths were on the Shadow Priest. He was testing something. Don't ignore that. But if you take a look behind me, that Prot Pally is doing a lot of damage in Gambit. Uncapped AoE. This is the highest DPS tank. At the moment, it is incredible damage and uncapped AoE. There is a problem with this damage, and I will say, okay, there is a problem. It's just pad AoE. It's single target, however, with the 4-set buff. The 2-set nerf and the 4-set buff to Prot Pally today in Lightsmith, we're talking about Lightsmith, actually gave it kind of a unique niche, which is now it does very good single target with the 4-set change. Before, its single target was very low, and it was all pad AoE damage. So even though the hype was like, yo, Prot Pally can burst for crazy, 20 mil, 25 mil on a big AoE pull. Yeah, but it was like, yeah, but on boss damage, you're doing 1.2, 1.3. It's really sad. Actually, that changed. I think the buff to Prot Pally today was fairly good for its damage, but it's still squishy. If you actually push keys, Prot Pally is still squishy. However, here's where the caveats start to come in. Prot Pally is probably the best tank for your average 12 key. There is almost nothing better. Even the quote-unquote S-tier tank. If you're doing a plus 12 or a plus 15, most likely Prot Pally will be the best tank you can play. It is consistent, it's awesome, it does good damage, but at that key level, most likely all you want is a tank that lives and has good utility. There is a chance, because Prot Pally is skill capped, there is an issue with this, which is that honestly, it might die. There's a world where you take this advice and you say, oh, maybe I'm gonna invite a Prot Pally and they die. Could happen. If you play Prot Pally poorly, you will literally just fall over. But if you play it well, It's still tanky. It's more than tanky enough for 12 or 15. When you start getting into very high level keys, like if you're a title pusher and you're watching this video and you're like, oh man, what tank? Prot Pally ain't for you. Okay? It is squishy. It requires a lot more attention when the key level gets higher, but at a base level, it is still a tanky tank. I do think that the issue with Prot Pally is once those key levels start going up, it's the base mitigation starts to really affect it. You'll go into a pull that you lived several key levels lower and you'll be like, not bad. But then you'll do it again on a higher key and you'll just be like, yo, wait, I'm just dying through my basic mitigation. So I think that Prot Pally has this issue. There is one other reason that Prot Pally is up here, way above the other tanks. And actually, in one dungeon in particular this season, I swear Prot Pally is actually like all the way up here. Arakara, Prot Pally is a specialist in. I've played other tanks in Arakara. They're fine. But Prot Pally, nothing feels better than Prot Pally in Arakara. The pulls are set up specifically so that Avenger Shield thrives in so many of those pulls. Like the way that Shield works, it is the best kick in the game for Arakara. You don't necessarily need an AoE silence on a large cooldown. You need consistent kicks on one or two targets. Prot Pally is your absolute best bet for that, number one. And number two, freedom for the end. Amazing for the tank change they did at the end with the grasping slashes. The sack being a 12-second duration. You have a long poison cleanse, right? It's not just that you have a regular poison cleanse because Brewmaster and Bear also have poison cleanse, but the actual talent, because of the way the poison crawlers work, I tested this a bunch. If sack is on a target, the thing will still try to cast on the person with Blessing of Sacrifice, but it just won't stack. Like they just won't take the poison, which is a gigantic favor in all Pally specializations in Arakara. Do you need it? No, I'm sure you could game it without a Prot Pally, but it feels really nice to be able to have that utility. Bop, Spell Ward, and a few other things less important in that dungeon. It's just mostly the sacrifice on a 1-minute talent for the first area. If they don't change how those poisons are working, which I think they will because everybody's pretty much complaining and everybody universally agrees they made Arakara harder for some reason. But if Arakara, for some reason, becomes a check, Prot Pally is very good, and it also doesn't hit tanks that hard. Most mechanics, every Prot Pally can live Arakara. So when you combine all those factors, Prot Pally is in a pretty decent spot. If you asked me, genuinely, would you rather play Prot Pally or Bear next season? Whoa. I think I would choose Prot Pally. Like, it's just so demotivating that they nerfed the tier set for Bear. It was unnecessary, and it was uncalled for, and we didn't do anything to deserve it. But you know what? I'm impartial for this tier list. I'm not making this as a Guardian Druid player. I'm making this as a WoW passionate advocate, okay? Listen, I am making this as a WoW player, so I will be impartial, and I will rank this objectively and fairly. All right, what are the next tank? The next tank. Do you think the next tank is an A, or do you think the next tank is an S plus cheesecake? Because we have a very interesting thing. I love Guardian. I like Pally. These are two of my favorite tanks. But guess what? Interestingly enough, this is crazy. Are you ready for this? This is crazy. This is crazy. I genuinely believe what I'm about to do right now. I genuinely believe this. I think there are 3 S plus tanks. I think there are 3. And I think it looks something like this. When I can find Brewmaster on this. There it is. I actually think there are 3 tanks competing for meta right now. Tuning will ultimately determine which of these tanks is going to be best because these tanks are highly dependent on the other specializations. What healer you end up playing, what DPS you end up playing, but all 3 of these tanks are quite amazing right now. Now, in my Discord, I half am tempted to make a poll asking people if they think that VDH will actually get nerfed this season. Because the patch notes today were not a nerf to VDH. It was a slight love tap. Let's talk about all 3. We're going to go through it. Because what order are they? What tank do I actually think is the best? Good question. Good question, okay? Listen, good question. If you miss any of this, by the way, if you're asking why are things here, you got to go back and rewatch the video because I won't go over it again, but this will be posted to YouTube, so don't worry. You'll have a chance to watch it. Okay, which is going to be the actual best? All right, let's talk about the thing that I actually think is not the best. And surprisingly, if I had to rank it, it would genuinely be VDH. I think that VDH, I do believe in my heart of hearts that they are going to nerf it to the extent where it cannot be it cannot be the meta tank. It cannot be the S++++ tier tank. I just think they won't let this happen. But also, if you look at the patch notes and the cadence, there are some specializations that are getting specific attention, consistent attention, and that's Prot Warrior and Brewmaster. Those two specializations are getting the most attention, and they have been the whole time, which suggests to me, right, trying to make a 3,000 IQ play, that Blizzard wants those tanks to be in contention, okay? Blizzard wants these two top tanks to be there. In other words, VDH goes down 1. The exception to this, of course, because obviously those top 2 tanks there suggest something interesting about a physical comp meta. VDH is a caster comp meta. I wonder if there will be a caster meta. Because the way I see it right now is VDH does not belong in a tier below these. I actually think all 3 are S+. So here's the situation that we have. VDH is just VDH from last season. They literally didn't change anything about this. It hasn't been nerfed. It hasn't been buffed. The tier set's great. It's just VDH from last season. VDH is amazing. It has everything it did last season. It has the same problems it had last season. It has the same benefits it had last season. Congratulations. I would say one thing, okay? I would say one thing. There are a few dungeons where VDH utility is a little bit less useful. Like, again, I will clarify that the way that the last dungeon pool worked is that you really wanted grips and strong AoE stops, whereas you have something like Arakara, where grips are great, but I actually think that a Prot Pally shield is going to be more beneficial. It's kind of like City of Threads on a VDH. You would actually have rather had, and a lot of times, more like a Prot Pally kick. So there are some dungeons where the VDH utility will not shine through, but guess what we still have? We still have Priory. Yeah, we still have Priory. We still have Floodgate. We still have a bunch of things where VDH is incredibly beneficial. Like, for example, Prot Pally shines in Arakara, but imagine the pull before the third boss of Floodgate. Rest in peace, Bubbles. Moment of silence for Bubbles. VDH just makes that pull a joke because you grip all the seaweeds together. You have a CC, a CC, a CC. They all start casting at the same time. You Silent Sigil. The Silent Sigil puts the spell on cooldown, and all of a sudden you're fine. Whereas a Prot Pally, you could try to save Toll, the best that you can do, but you have Blinding Light and a Hodge, and that's it. So realistically, this tank struggles there. This tank solo controls it. Let's talk about the next tank in contention. Right, one other thing I want to say about VDH is, remember, VDH plus Boomie is why it has so much control. VDH and Boomie is that combination. If Boomie is not in contention... Oh, wait, that's the wrong finger. I'm so sorry. If VDH... This one. If VDH is not in contention, right? If Boomie is not actually considered meta, which we'll get to at the end, remember, we're going over DPS at the end, then VDH actually loses some of its value because Beam is very useful with VDH. They work very well together, yeah? So that's just one thing to consider. VDH, I think, is a very strong tank. I still think that actually everything has here, right? So VDH works well in high coordination groups when you can plan around their sigils, but I don't think it works as well in pugs. And the last thing I want to say, because I do want this to be a pug-friendly tier list, I want you to watch this and I want you to get information about the state of the game. If you want to watch a tier list and you're like, hey, look, what's happening in World of Warcraft for Season 3? There's something you really need to understand about VDH. I pug my keys, and I also heal, and I also tank, and I also DPS sometimes. Can I just tell you that VDH is an absolute terror to heal in this current season where it is currently the meta tank? This is my least favorite tank to heal. If I'm doing a pug 15 on one of my random ults that may be undergeared for it, but I want Vault or I want a 15, VDH scares me. I would rather be healing a Brewmaster than a VDH in the current season. In the current season, okay? This is very important to understand. If you're going to invite a tank to your 12 or your 15, VDH is very scary to heal. If you don't gather perfectly and if you don't have a plan on VDH, you are the squishiest tank out of any tank on this list. So I really think that, and especially your utility, if you just walk in and send every single CC and sigil in the first 2 seconds, then you've just wasted your utility. I actually think that VDH is a very strong, not friendly pug tank. It's good. It's better than some of the other things you could play, in my opinion, but it is not. This is the one tank where I would actually, if this was a purely, if you're talking like mid-tier pug, high in key, like let's say like bottom tier of title, let's say between 12 and 18 this season, I actually think VDH seriously goes down. Meld skips are no longer a thing. You don't need meld skips anymore, and that's one reason that VDH was so dominant right now, okay? Yeah, but Demon Hunter as a whole, right, to respond to everybody here, Demon Hunter as a whole is very, very skill capped. It would be the same thing. You remember in Season 1 when Prot Pally was meta? Prot Pally was a really rough pug tank to heal because you had Prot Pallies who didn't know how to rotate defensives, and they would just walk in, press everything, and then 10 seconds later they were dead, and there was nothing you could do about it. There were pug tanks who would walk into the first bull of Grim Batol, get scared, pop Wings, Guardians, Kings, Ardent, and Shield at the same time, and they would die, right? So VDH is very much like Prot Pally, where the skill ceiling is very high, which makes it oftentimes not so friendly to pugs. Okay, enough about VDH. I'm honestly ready for a season of not VDH, but right now they are still all the way up here. Okay, great. Next tank that's up here, which is actually considered the best tank right now, I'm going to go based on my rankings, which is I pug my keys. This is the best. Let's talk about the next one, Brewmaster. Brewmaster, as of right now, clearly, okay, clearly, Blizzard wants this tank to be good. They keep buffing it. And the change today, 8% to Mystic Touch, is ridiculously good, okay? Ridiculously good. Like, Brewmaster is very strong right now. Has very strong, consistent damage. Has very good survivability. I am not a good Brewmaster. Of all the 6 tanks on this list, Brewmaster is the tank that I, in my entire WoW career, have spent the least amount of time on. And I'm telling you, I can live, and it feels good to me. Imagine somebody who's good at that tank, because that tank is complicated and nuanced. Imagine somebody who's very good at Brewmaster. If I can make it work and do good on it, man, can somebody who's really good at it just milk that tank for all it's worth, okay? Normally, when you think about milking tanks, you think about Druid, but that's a completely unrelated subject that I won't get into here. This tank is really good right now. It's durable, it's strong, it does good damage, it has a poison cleanse, it has a few pieces of utility that are actually really good for these keys. I think it's pretty good. My main issue with Brewmaster and why it could struggle in some pug environments is that this does not have a ton of AoE CC. It kind of is in the same boat as Guardian was last season, where let's say that Brewmaster is actually one of the tankiest tanks you can play, okay? The issue is, like, let's say you're doing that pull. I'll use the same example. Floodgate is still in the pool. I actually, and this is something, if you're a high key pusher, you might not know this. This is something that you probably don't deal with in the highest level of keys, but if you're a pug player, you tell me if this has happened to you. I really want to know. Floodgate. Where do you wipe the most in Floodgate? One of the biggest pain points of Floodgate is the pull before Swamp Face. It's the seaweeds. When you pull 6 seaweeds together, no, the seaweed, aside from Bubble Skip, obviously, which is not in the next season, the seaweed pull, because you don't coordinate CCs and pugs. You don't coordinate CCs and pugs. I have actually lost so many floodgates because people will walk in and either send everything or send nothing. And those kelps go off, and you just can't kill that pull. They will just destroy you. So there are some tanks that make that pull easy, and there are some tanks that don't. You guys are all talking about meta CCs order, etc., etc. No. You're talking, this is high key. If you tell me right now that you have a meta CC order, I just logged out of this, hold up. If you tell me right now that you have a meta CC order, excuse me, that you're already talking about this coordination of keys that's all the way up here, right? You just listed me an entire CC order. Listen, you're already talking about a level of coordination that does not happen. This is the problem when people make tier lists. They automatically assume that you're talking to people who have this ridiculous coordination. You just listed me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things. 9 things. Yes, is that expected at that level? Absolutely. Is it expected that you know how to do all this? Yes, of course it is. All right. Let's just make this full screen now. Let's just make this full screen. Here we go. All right. Let's make this full screen. Okay. Is it expected that at that level you actually know all this stuff? Sure. Okay. But I'm telling you that for most keys, you got to understand that that doesn't happen. People don't have that coordination. And the reason that that's so important to understand is that there are some tanks that are better at soloing this, and then there are some tanks that are not. And so if you're doing a 15 floodgate, you would rather have something like a prot warrior even, or a demon hunter than a brewmaster. That's where Brewmaster suffers with. So when we're doing a tier list like this, it's important to understand this has an AoE interrupt. So at least you know as a tank, you're like, I'm going to push this button when they start casting. Great. So at the very least you have that. Plus you have Shockwave twice in that pull, if not 3 times, and a Stormbolt. Okay? And a Disrupting Shout if you want to play it, the Fear. So you have options as a warrior. My bear, I have In-Cap Roar, a Typhoon, Vortex, etc. But I only have 1 kick. So every time I play this on bear in a lower key when I'm helping a friend, I just try my best, but the reality is I'm terrified of that pull. I also have War Stomp as a Tauren, by the way, which these can be, which is interesting, whatever, right? Okay, so there's a world where even in a lower key, I would pull those 3x3. I would even not pull them 6, right? And that's the serious issue of, like, you got to understand these utility pieces, right? They don't always work the same in every key level. So this requires coordination to work around, but there are some pulls you're going to want this. Brewmaster is like that. There are some pulls where Brewmaster is going to struggle. If you try the first pull of Priory, like a high key level Priory, and you want to do that in a plus 16, plus 17, plus 18 Priory, you are going to have a hard time as a Brewmaster. You will have an easier time as a Warrior, actually, because you at least can say, look, I can kind of see maybe as a tank that something's missing here, and I'm just going to go, boom, Disrupting Shout. Huge value to have an AoE taunt and an AoE kick on a 6-second cooldown interrupt, okay? So anyways, Brewmaster, those are my thoughts on Brewmaster. These 2 tanks are technical. They're technical tanks. I really think in Pugs, if I actually had to rank this purely for Pugs and not considering high keys at all, the answer is this. This is the true answer right here, but the actual consideration is I can totally see the highest level keys being done with these 2 tanks, depending on comp differences. This, however, is a straightforward, sturdy, very good damage, very good utility, warrior buff. This is a crazy good tank right now. They nerfed it today. It's like a less than 1% nerf. They barely touched it. They actually specifically addressed it, okay? And they didn't do anything to it. Warrior is an incredibly good tank for this dungeon pool, except for one thing, which it doesn't have Dispel. Does not have Dispel. Right? But there are 2 things to consider. One is if you're playing a purely physical comp, you are going to want a Brewmaster. You're going to want a Monk somewhere in that comp because Mystic Touch got Giga buffed, and you're really, really going to want to understand, like, you really, like, that Mystic Touch is going to be required in a purely physical comp. But there aren't that many physical comps. There aren't that many physical classes. You actually think about this? Somebody was saying earlier in one of the Discords I'm in, they were like, oh, you're totally playing like Brewmaster, Marksman Hunter. And I was like, what about BM Hunter? And they go, what do you mean Marksman? We got to play Marksman Hunter. It's better. And I'm like, Marksman Hunter, a lot of their damage is magic. And they're like, okay, well, instead of Marksman Hunter, we're going to play Enhancement Shaman, Brewmaster. And I was like, Enhancement Shaman? Most of Enhancement Shaman's damage is magic, not physical. And they go, okay, well, Frost DK. And I go, hold up, wait a second. That's mostly magic damage. You see? So all of a sudden, you start to get into this thing where you got to understand that not everything in the game is fizz. Even if you're a melee, you would assume that a Ret Pally, Zug Ret Pally, 2-handed axe, just like smacking stuff, you would assume that that thing is physical. It's not, actually. Most of their damage is holy. Although they have Holy Strike with Divine Arbiter, but that's a totally separate thing. Listen, Okay, we won't get into that too much right now. But in terms of the tanks, you know what does buff everything I just mentioned? Warrior. Warrior buff is attack power based, and all melee characters go from attack power. So attack power buffs something that doesn't do physical damage. Attack power equally buffs a Beastmaster Hunter, a Marksman Hunter. It equally buffs your Enhancement Shaman, every single rogue spec. Will even buff Survival Hunter, funny enough. It buffs all the different things. Does that make sense? So warrior tank is more universal. The warrior buff is more universal. And thank you all, by the way, for saying that. I won't interrupt too much because I'm just going to direct clip this, and this is all going to be on YouTube. If you missed any of the explanation that I've already done, this is going to be a very long video, but I will make sure to upload this whole thing to YouTube. When we talk about the meta, again, just take a quick second here before I finish my talk on warrior. Before a quick second, everything is playable. Meta perception is important because if I don't make this list, somebody else will. And they won't caveat it. They'll just be like, this is the best. You should invite this, because they're talking about a plus 19 or a plus 20. The problem is that at a plus 12, you're going to say, oh, okay, so I won't take a Blood DK, and instead I'm going to take this other tank. And it's like, without the caveat, you got to understand that oftentimes the tank here or the specialization down here will actually do better in your plus 12 than the one up here. There's a reason these things are S+. The exception to that is I'm pretty sure that warrior tank, there's only one way that warrior tank dies, and it's getting hit in the back. Most tanks at a lower key level do in fact have that happen to them. They don't understand the basics of tanking just yet. They haven't been tanking for years and years. So the only way that warrior dies is to get hit in the back. But otherwise, warrior is very straightforward. It's pretty difficult to mess up your rotation on warrior. I think that it's just super tanky. If you're going to mess up your rotation on warrior, I guarantee you that you will mess up your rotation on every other tank. So, it's just, you keep shield up, you keep ignore pain up, you hit these few buttons. It's pretty straightforward. So, warrior, I think, has a lot of value in just being a very sturdy tank with consistent damage. That's the other thing. Warrior doesn't depend on a 2-minute cooldown for damage. It doesn't need incarn pulls. It has damage every 45 seconds, which is awesome. That is a huge value as a tank. Damage every 45 seconds means damage every pack. Very, very helpful for warrior. But mainly the disrupting shout and the fact that their group buff is more universal, the fact that they'll always benefit their team, and I think they're going to be, give or take, the tankiest tank for a lot of content. I think that this tank is in a really good spot right now. They're a lot more self-sufficient than they used to be. Some of the issues they used to have, they don't have anymore. The exception to this is if you're healing a warrior, they're still going to need some help in some scenarios. Like they're still going to need some help in, as an example, they're still going to need some help in Dawnbreaker when they're dealing with bleeds. Bleeds hurt warrior, but there aren't a ton of bleeds this season. First boss of Priory, you're going to need to pay attention to your warrior. There's a lot of instances where warrior will still need healing, but for the most part, those instances, your healer can actually watch them, so it's okay, all right? But I do think that the biggest issue with warrior, the one caveat before you take this as an absolute saving grace, this tank literally goes down here if you're playing with a bad warrior in a lower key level, because they will just get hit in the back and they will instantly die. So if you're a warrior player, please play cheat death. You have like the most OP cheat death in the game. I know a lot of people don't know this because some warriors don't play it, but you have like the most OP cheat death in the game. You will probably make a mistake if you're trying to learn warrior, because there's going to be a lot of fodder rerollers to warrior, and you can't get hit in the back. It's the one thing you got to work on as a warrior tank. You can't get hit in the back, okay? Anyways, that's give or take my tank tier list. Let's move on to healers. So this is where I think the tanks are right now. I actually think at the very end here, I'm going to talk about what's interesting about this S+ category. There are two very distinct comps. There are two distinct comps that are happening right now. You can play two. You might actually next season have two completely different things, okay? So there's a bunch of things. In the season, I could see myself playing warrior. I think that I think out of these three, playstyle wise, I prefer warrior. So we'll go from there. Okay, healing time. We're gonna start off with the worst healer, bottom to top. Okay, bottom to top. What do you guys think the worst healer is? If you had to guess, what's at the bottom? I will give you a hint that this healer has received effectively no changes. Yeah, everybody gets it. This healer has received Effectively, everybody gets it. Literally everyone knows. All right? Actually, incorrect. Blood DK is a better healer than this. It is Holy Priest. Holy Priest goes all the way down here. The reason is very simple. It doesn't do anything that any other healer can do. It does everything worse. Okay? It's a raid healer. It's not meant for keys. Everything that Holy Priest can do in a key, every other healer does better. It has 0 niches. You have to actively be healing. You do not heal through damage. So you're either doing damage or you're healing. Okay? The way that you heal is triage healing. You don't have a lot of consistent AoE burst healing. You have very specific, you go heal, flash heal, this, that. You have a few good abilities, sure. But you still rely on people being stacked, which in a pug environment is not going to happen. There's a lot of fights, actually, in this particular season where range is going to be a small issue. You have fights like Big Mama, where everybody is right there, perfect. But you also have fights that people are going to be a lot more spread, like the last boss of Gambit, or the second boss of Gambit, right? You have a lot of instances where people are going to be more spread. Holy Priest can be a little bit tough with that when everybody is consistently taking damage. Now, if there's 1 or 2 dots, Holy Priest is excellent at that. Of course, you can do spot healing as Holy Priest. A lot of times in keys, the healing checks are not spot healing based. They are going to be full on AoE. Every single person is going to be absolutely getting clapped, and you need to keep them alive consistently. There are some fights that Holy Priest is great on, but even in those fights, even in the specific instances where you're like, man, I wish I was a Holy Priest, no one has ever said that. Yet at no point are you healing a key and you're like, I wish I was a Holy Priest. So this spec is soup. It's not good, okay? It's just, it could use something. I don't know what it needs, but there's something that Holy Priest needs in order to be out of this category. Is it playable? Sure. I've actually played with a few good Holy Priests this season. I played with a Holy Priest in an 18 Floodgate. They did great. But they were still subpar to everything else. They were like, look how much damage I do. I said, yeah, but if you were a different healer, you would do more damage. You're doing good damage for a Holy Priest. And they're like, well, my healing. I'm like, yeah, well, you managed to heal it, but you could have healed it better if you weren't a Holy Priest. And they're like, yeah, that's true. You know what I mean? So Holy Priest is just, it doesn't have a niche. There's nothing special about it. Does that make sense? Okay. Next healer in this list here. Okay. Let me explain this next one. Okay. Well, that's, let me finish the list here. Let me explain. This is a little bit of a caveat healer. Okay. This is a little bit of a take. There are 2 healers that I'm considering for these next 2. I would put it like this. Let me explain why. If you are very good at Holy Pally, you can do the required output for a lot of these dungeons. But it's kind of hard to do because most Holy Pallies are just going to fall behind on HPS. At the end of the day, a healer is supposed to provide utility and coordination and kicks and all this stuff that you can do as a healer. But the truth is, HPS and actually keeping people alive is the number one thing that you need to do. There's another healer I was going to consider down here, okay? And I'll argue against both, and I would hear the arguments for both, but let me make my case, okay? Let me make my case for why I think Holy Paladin is here. I'm going to average it out. You can't factor Ellesmere into this. Obviously, everything, even the best Holy Priest in the world would probably be able to keep people alive. But I'm talking for the average pug experience. I think Holy Pally is a melee healer. It is going to struggle on a lot of these encounters when it can't actually hit. There's a lot of phasing encounters. There's a lot of things that you have to worry about as a melee healer, okay? There's another healer I was thinking about. In terms of their set getting buffed, can they do it? Yes. But I think they have to work a lot harder. The best thing that this actually has, the best thing that Holy Pally has going for it is the fact that, like, Arakara is in the dungeon pool, and this is very good, okay? This is very good at that. The problem is, yes, I hear what you're saying. The issue is that even if they execute their rotation, if they don't have a specific plan, HPS is not as high as other healers in a dungeon environment. You can plan pretty well, but if you actually play it, so you have to play it. I've played it. Granted, I've only played it 3 dungeons. 3 dungeons this entire PTR cycle. The play style of Holy Paladin is technically fluid, but can struggle with high HPS requirements. Like, I'm thinking Big Mama in Floodgate or even Swamp Face in Floodgate. You have good burst healing, but it's not incredibly sustained outside of your major cooldowns. And if you're deciding to play the Avengers Crusader melee wings build, then you have more consistent healing, which is what you're playing. But at the same time, it's not, for example, like you can just hit a judgment in that window and everybody's full health. Like, that's not how it works. Does it do good healing? Sure. But in an actual HPS environment, it's not like you can just go, okay, I'm gonna hit wings, and then I'm gonna hit judgment, and then everybody's full health. You actually have to have a pretty specific plan for how you're gonna get through a 10-second burst of AoE damage. Okay? So here we go. All right. Here we go. Okay. That's Holy Paladin. The best thing it has going for it is that it has an immunity, which is awesome. It has pretty good utility in terms of its Paladin kit. Arakara exists in the dungeon pool, etc., etc. The next healer is going to have similar issues, and that's Mistweaver. But there is a fair difference between these two, which is that in AoE, Mistweaver effectively can press 2 buttons. Okay? This isn't really related to the tier sets, but more fundamental issues with the spec. This right here is fundamentally, both of these have a similar issue. One of the things with Holy Pally is that although it provides very small DRs, a lot of their DRs were nerfed from when it was actually OP, and it has Deva Aura, and it has a few things that it can provide, right? But it's just, I think that in most keys, H-Pally is going to struggle with HPS on some of these encounters. Like, I could fully see you're in Arakara, you pull one of the new Blood Guards that does the AoE, the Locust Swarm, yeah? That pulls one of the Locust Swarm, and you would rather be playing with somebody that's not an H-Pal. I think an H-Pal will struggle in a lot of environments there. I think that you would rather be playing with somebody else. Now, the next healer, Mistweaver. Mistweaver has a lot easier of a time doing HPS, but they are still a melee healer. The biggest thing that Mistweaver has going for it is that when the comp works for Mistweaver, it works for Mistweaver, okay? It works for Mistweaver. But if you're comparing the two, you have a fist-weaving build, and any healer that does healing through damage tends to be much better at healing keys. The reason is simple. Their rotation is just straightforward. You walk in, you do a few buttons, which you're already going to do, okay? You're already going to do those buttons, and then you have basic healing on the group. And you only need to press your healing buttons when there's actual, like, an instance of damage. So many of these pulls are great for that, okay? There's, like, think about the first pull of Gambit. Man, is it going to be fun to be a Mistweaver there. There's a lot of things of why Mistweaver can just kind of do a sort of smooth, flawless rotation that is relatively straightforward and able to top your group. You have very small maintenance windows. You have very small maintenance buffs, but effectively, you can press your buttons as a Mistweaver and do very fair HPS. At the highest level, can Mistweaver do the required HPS? Yes, although then it has to start working very hard. I think that Mistweaver is actually a much better healer for like a mid-tier key, whereas when you get to like a plus 20 Candle King, Mistweaver all of a sudden has to start gaming, where some other healers are like, yeah, I can do mostly the same thing, just work a little bit harder. Mistweaver has to start really actually gaming. The main problem with Mistweaver is that if you're ever out of range of your target, which is, I'm thinking of a few things right now in particular, it could be an issue on like the second boss. I think second boss of Gambit would be fine. Third boss of Gambit could be an issue. There's like a few instances where there actually are HPS checks this dungeon. You can make a plan with Shaylin's Gift. You can make a plan with Renewal. You can make a plan with a few things. The last boss of Arakara was nerfed to the extent that you don't need to heal it anymore. You just need to dodge. Like, honestly, the last boss of Arkar is a joke. You have Poison Dispel. Both of these healers have Poison Dispel. You can just dispel one target. You'll probably be playing with a second Poison Dispel. There's like a single target to heal. Mistweaver has one fundamental problem. Otherwise, it might even be a little bit higher. There are two fundamental problems. Number one is it's melee. Actually, there are a lot of possible melee comps this season. You're going to want to range. But number one, the main issue with Mistweaver, its external is weaker than a single Dispriest shield. The external of Mistweaver is so bad that it doesn't even count as an external. It's like a button that you can press on a long cooldown. The Chi Cocoon, all right? The Cocoon is like really bad. Like really, really bad. And I don't know exactly what they can do. I feel like if they just reduce the cooldown by 50%, that would actually be a fairly substantial quality of life improvement. Wouldn't even be a crazy HPS improvement. It would just be like, what? That button sucks. Like, it's not a tank external. Basically, if you put that button on a tank, it does functionally nothing. Like, it's hilarious. If you've ever tanked before and you're playing with a Mistweaver and you go, external me now, please. They go, I mean, okay. And then you die anyways. It's weaker than any external in the game. It is by far less effective than a Holy Priest has GS, which is better. Everything is a better external than this. So if for some reason you are playing with a tank that requires an external at any point, good luck. Your tank has to be gaming pretty hard with the Mistweaver. It can very much struggle to do competitive, basic tank support. So I think that Mistweaver's main problem is its actual lack of external. And it does have a melee kick, it does have leg sweep, it does have Ring of Peace, it does have a Dispel, it has a few options for stuff like that. But basically, what is Cocoon? Cocoon, the major issue with Mistweaver is not its damage or anything, it's just Cocoon. Cocoon is so bad, and it doesn't need to be that bad. All right, let's move on. Those are my takes about Mistweaver. To be honest, I almost put this in needs more testing. This is kind of based not on the performance of PTR, because I will openly admit to you, I'm very confident about this ranking. I've only played with one Mistweaver in the entirety of PTR testing. This is actually the thing. I have seen more Holy Priests on PTR than I have seen Mistweavers. I've only seen one. So I could be wrong about this. If there was one healer I'd be willing to be very wrong about, it would be this. Right now, I'm not super confident because I've only seen one. All right, next. We have a few healers left, yeah? We have a few healers left. The next healer is one that is near and dear to my heart. It has fundamental issues within the spec itself, but technically, it is very good right now. It's very good, but it's got fundamental issues. Evoker goes in A tier. It is significantly, in my opinion, better than these three. However, it does have its issues. Now, before you tell me, don't get up in arms, before you tell me, oh, its issue is its range. No, it's not. The range is a very small issue. I love Prez, okay? I've been playing Prez for a while. It is not an issue. The range issue is, like, insignificant. It's very easy to deal with the range issue. Is it occasionally annoying? Yeah, but it's not that bad. Like, it's honestly not that bad. You just have to understand that Echo has infinite range. This is a huge tip for all the Prez Evokers out there. Echo has infinite range, dude. You just have to get in range of the person, echo them, and then you could be 100 yards away and just you'll still hit them with the spell. So basically, if you're having a bunch of range issues, it's possible that you're just playing with 3 range who are all over the place and you could have a hard time healing, but Prez right now. Okay. Here's the thing with Prez. It is infinite damage. A lot of its damage is pad AoE, but in testing it a bunch on PTR, because this is my favorite healer, so I'm a little biased, but I've also tested it objectively. This currently, I will let you know. I will be honest with you. I don't want to sandbag any specs here. If you're watching this, this is my honest opinion. Prez does the most healer damage out of any healer overall right now in any key, including group buffs. Including group buffs, Prez actually is the highest overall damage healer, and good, because it needs that. The only reason that it's an A tier and not, like, down here is specifically because its new tier set gives it so much damage that it actually doubles the damage of healers with group buffs, which is necessary and required for it to ever be considered whatsoever in a meta contention. In order for Prez to find its way into a group, it needs to be doing basically twice as much healing and twice as much damage as any other healer because it does not provide a group buff. It has no PI, it has no Mistweaver buff, which is now massive. It's not a Resto Druid, it's not a Resto Shaman. It has a 40-second kick. It does not have a 12-second kick. It has a few pieces of utility, but not a lot, right? Zephyr almost doesn't count as utility because you could just say, yeah, but you could also downpour as a shaman. You could also dispriest shield. You could also XYZ. Zephyr doesn't count as utility as a healer. It does count as utility as a DPS. This is just a healing cooldown. The problem with Prez, there are two main problems with Prez. Number one, it is very, very skill capped. A lot of people who play Prez completely butcher the spec, and that's okay because it's still fun to play and it's learning, right? And that's okay. It's no problem to not be playing it to perfection. The problem with Prez is that the skill floor is so basically low. And when I say low, I mean if you play it poorly, you do nothing. Like if you are playing Prez poorly, you do 0 HPS and 0 damage, like maybe some damage, but you'll do 0 HPS. And again, healer damage is cool ultimately, and we saw this last season, rather than focus so much on healer damage, the only thing that actually matters is your ability to keep your group alive. That is the only thing that matters. Okay? It's the only thing that matters. And so healer damage is sweet, but Oracle Dispriest was meta last season, correct? Oracle Dispriest does no damage. It has PI. That's its main damaging value. But you still played it because it made people feel so safe. When DPS feels safe, when DPS feel all cozy and they feel safe, and boomies don't have to bear form and nobody has to press defensives, they do more damage, right? When DPS start panicking because they're actually taking damage, they're like, wait, I don't have a shield for my entire health bar, and they actually have to start working at their rotation and defensives, then they do less damage. DPS will infinitely always do more damage than a healer, so anytime you as a healer can make your DPS feel safer, they tend to do better damage. Prez is not good at this. In order for Prez to heal successfully, oftentimes it needs to let people drop low a little bit, so I understand that some people can feel more concerned playing with a Prez Evoker. It does not have massive shielding. It does have a few options, but they're pretty minor. So, a good Prez Evoker can do infinite HPS, although it is much, 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 much harder to do so than other healers. It is hilarious to me because the healer I'm going to rank above this, it is hilarious to me the difference between playing a Prez Evoker and something like a Resto Shaman. It is significantly different. I love Prez Evoker, but the shit is calculus. You have to be prepping significantly ahead of the damage, and you have to understand your kit very well. So the delta between a Prez Evoker who does and does not understand that is 500% instead of 50%. That is a big problem. And I hate to say this because I love this spec. For a normal pug in a plus 12, going back to the pug tier list part of this, if this is a plus 12 or a plus 15, this healer is like, you would take a Holy Priest. Prez is like the one spec I would not take to your plus 12. I will openly say that to you, okay? I will also say that to you. But if you play with a good Prez Evoker, you will be so impressed. You'll be like, wow, they're doing so well. You won't know why they're doing so well, but they will impress you. A very good Prez Evoker borderline brings the spec up here, just like a good Holy Pally does with Ellesmere, etc., etc. But the point is, this is a nuanced spec. I have a lot to say on the matter. I maybe will even make a guide for it at some point or some simple content because it's very complicated, but it's really not once you understand it. Okay, moving on for the tier list. I won't spend too much time talking about each healer. Let's go. Right above this. I was really thinking about this, and I was actually considering it. There are 3 healers left, yeah? There are 3 healers left. I think that, give or take, it's really hard for me to put Resto Shaman not in S+, but I borderline right now from PTR testing, I find it to be an A. It should be in high A. I think there are two healers that are an S plus, and they have a mind of their own, and they have a very specific reason why they're an S plus. I find Resto Shaman at the moment to just be Resto Shaman. Its new tier set gives it 0 damage. It gives it no more damage, and it's an interesting set, but it doesn't give it like anything too crazy valuable. And I'm talking specifically the totemic set, which is most likely what you're playing in keys. In my PTR testing, I've actually seen many Farseer Resto Shamans. The main thing that Resto Shaman has going for it is that it's a Resto Shaman. It has everything it did last season. It's got a 12-second kick. It's got Cap Totem every single pull. It's got Thunderstorm every single pull. It has a Lust, as does Prez. But it's so straightforward. The one thing that people don't talk about when they think about specs is how straightforward it is. I love Prez. Shit's hard. I like Resto Shaman. Shit's easy. The delta between a very good Resto Shaman and a Resto Shaman that's mid is like, it's there, of course, but it's not like 300%. It's like this. It's like right here. In other words, you can feel safe inviting your Resto Shaman. A Resto Shaman is by far, if I was going to rate this in terms of pug healing, Resto Shaman is like A++, S+. It's the ultimate Nutella Oreo cheesecake. It's the best cheesecake you've ever had in your life. There is no healer that is better than a Resto Shaman at healing pure pug content. For high keys, though, and for meta, the only reason you would play it is because you need a Shaman buff. It actually doesn't, aside in a high key coordination group, the Resto Shaman basically, okay, the Resto Shaman just provides the Shaman buff. Its damage is mid. Its damage is just, it's okay. But the new tier set didn't help with that. Its HPS is there, although sometimes it can struggle a little bit, okay? Its HPS can struggle a tiny bit depending on whether people are standing in your downpour, etc., etc. There are a few things that Resto Shaman can struggle with, but mostly it's a jack of all trades. It has pretty good utility for almost everything. It doesn't have a poison cleanse itself, but it does have totem, which you can recall. It does have a tank external in the sense that Earth Shield plus 20% max health is borderline a consistent tank external. Tanks shouldn't need a lot of externals this season. In my testing thus far, there's very few things that really are scarily one-shotting tanks to the degree that Resto Shaman wouldn't have an external. Like, that alone is enough for you to live Big Mama, and it can do fairly significant tank healing. It's not going to do the most tank healing out of anything in the world. Tanks are pretty independent this season. Resto Shaman works well with pretty much any tank. But if you need a Shaman buff, Resto Shaman gets very good. I would say Resto Shaman loses value if the other two DPS Shamans are good. But effectively, Resto Shaman, very easy to execute. I cannot express this enough. If you're listening to this part of the video and you don't know how to heal or you've never healed before, let me explain this in the simplest terms possible, okay? Give me 30 seconds, okay? Give me 30 seconds. This healer, damage is happening. You're on the first boss of Arakara, okay? Damage is happening. You're going to TA reversion, and then you're going to make sure that you blanket Dream Breath beforehand. After the Dream Breath, you're going to manually echo, and /or you can Fire Breath and have a Life Giver's Flame with a Leaping Flame proc on. And then what you're going to do from there is you're going to VE into a Spirit Bloom for the Alerting Shrill, but there's high movement, so the next one you're going to VE, do the same setups, your TA, make sure your reversions double Golden Hour the one person for your, double reversion that one person, so you have that dot on them, and you know they have more healing on them for Grace Period, and then you're going to basically, from here, you're going to VE into a Life Spark, and then potentially, I've just described the healing rotation for Prez. Resto Shaman, I'm going to press my totem. I'm going to Riptide. I'm going to press my totem. Okay, all good. The difference cannot be overstated because both of those things did just the same amounts of HPS. Both of those things did exactly the same HPS. So when it comes to pug healing, okay, you want the class that can just go totem, healing, instead of the class that requires literal calculus and 15 seconds of prep work. Not even 15 seconds, but quite. You know what I mean? Okay? So, yeah, all right. So, basically, Resto Shaman's Resto Shaman. It is the king of pug healers. If you're actually talking about pug healing, you wouldn't mean healing rain. You're playing Totemic most likely. You're probably playing Totemic. Maybe you're playing Farseer, which is slightly more complicated. You actually have to ramp a little bit with Ancestors, but you don't have to ramp for anything as a Resto Shaman. You just have to have a plan. You have one totem. You just you actually put Surging Totem down, then you hit Healing Tide Totem, and you're good, okay? Listen, Resto Shaman is Resto Shaman. It is probably your best, by the way. As a first healer, you want to play Resto Shaman. If you ever want to learn how to heal, play Resto Shaman. It'll be your best first healing experience. Great, moving on. We have 2 healers in contention for S tier. Dispriest has not been nerfed enough. It's still Dispriest. You actually have Voidweaver Dispriest kind of making a comeback because Dispriests are on strike now and they say, we want to do damage too. We don't want to play this Oracle support spec anymore. But they're probably still going to play Oracle support spec because Oracle support spec hasn't been nerfed enough. Will it get nerfed again? I hope so, because it really makes people significantly lazy. The problem with Oracle Dispriest, when I talk about this spec, is that you can't play other healers when Oracle exists because Oracle has a permanent external. And again, I want to put this in perspective for the people listening who don't play this healer and don't play other healers. Let me explain something to you. Do you know what an external is in World of Warcraft? An external is your oh shit button as a healer that gives one person in your party a gigantic DR. So Dispriest traditionally has had pain suppression. Or your Mistweaver has Cocoon, which is what we talked about earlier. Oracle Dispriest has that, and normally these things are about a 1-minute cooldown. You cannot use them that often. You have Blessing of Sacrifice or Lay on Hands. You have Guardian Spirit. You have etc., okay? Dispriest, Oracle, right now, that the value of a single shield, which is effectively spammable, okay, with a few interactions, is the same value as that external, which most classes can only do on a 1-minute cooldown. You see where the brain is going here? Most classes can do what Oracle can do on a 1-minute cooldown. This spec can just pump them out. It is ridiculous. To the degree where healers, I've actually almost never seen this before, by the way. Okay, you also still have 2 charges of pain sub, correct. But I've almost never seen this where healers are so willing for an entire season to drop damage. Like, I saw a few Oracles still wanting to play something like Bursting Light Shard last season because they were like, I'm so sad, I do 200k. But still, everyone played it. I've actually very rarely seen somebody willing to just do that gameplay, which is kind of degenerate and less fun for you, because it's so good, and they haven't nerfed it. I assume they will nerf it, but if they don't nerf it, Oracle is still Oracle. And if you really want, in the same specialization, okay, you can just swap hero talents and play Voidweaver. And that is pretty interesting. You could just swap Voidweaver if you want more damage and still be able to heal as a Dispriest. It still has Dispriest problems. There are a few things that it could struggle to heal, but ultimately, Oracle is Oracle, and Dispriest is Dispriest, okay? You have 2 hero talent specializations. That's pretty cool. Okay, that's Oracle. I really don't need to explain this anymore. You have you have stamina buff for your group if Shadow Priest is not played, which traditionally it isn't, although it is actually quite good this season. All right, spoiler alert. So you have Priest buff, you have Priest utility. Okay, Priest doesn't really have utility, I'm not going to lie. You don't even have a kick. Oracle was still meta the last season. You don't have a kick. You have 1 AoE stop, and it's barely a stop at that. You have no utility. It just makes you feel so safe that you play it, okay? That hasn't been nerfed. You're still going to have that same interaction. The other meta healer for S tier is considered Resto Druid right now. Resto Druid, PI is not utility. PI is a DPS. That's like part of the reason why you still do damage, okay? PI, fine, PI. I'll give them that. They have PI. All right. Mind Soothe. Mind Soothe is used in like 1 pull, like 2 pulls this season. All right. Okay. So Dispriest is still Dispriest, has all the same benefits and problems that it had before. Okay. Yeah, Master Spell actually pretty good this season, but we'll go over that in a second. Okay. Right. Not enough. Like, the Priest utility still lands whole. Nobody argued with this. Everybody was like, yep, that makes sense. Holy Priest is all the way down here. So Dispriest, they have the same utility. If you're talking about the utility of Priest, these two have exactly the same utility. They're the same spec, but they're so different. They're the same class, but they're so vastly different that you know one of them is here and one of them is here. So don't talk to me about priest utility. Okay. Resto Druid. Resto Druid is inherently buffed right now. There is a problem with Resto Druid being considered the S plus cheesecake tier. Number one, it's overtuned. If it's not overtuned, it struggles. Resto Druid is notoriously only meta when it is actually overtuned and can do just ridiculous levels of HPS. Right now it is. They nerf the tier 1 and they won't actually nerf the tier. They nerfed the tier once and it was not enough. It still is just as good. If they nerf it again, this spec drops precipitously. It actually doesn't bring a lot to keys. It has a relatively weak external. Barkskin is relatively not... So Barkskin is not the best external in the game. It really isn't. It's fairly weak, especially... It's doable, but you would rather have Paints Up in almost every scenario. It's okay. It has this spec is good because it has infinite HPS. My main issue with Resto Druid is that in pugs, you have to accept the fact that you can't be in cat form for most pugs because you are still a ramp healer. The way that Resto Druid healing works is that you need to prepare for damage. If you have not prepared for damage, you cannot heal damage. This is a big problem. If you cannot prepare for the damage, you can't heal the damage. Any healer that is a ramp healer struggles in uncoordinated pugs. When there's casts going off left and right, if you think you're going to be in cat form in a lot of these pug keys, you're wrong. You're not going to be in cat form for a lot of these pug keys. You are going to struggle, okay? That being said, healer damage, you provide Mark of the Wild. Mark of the Wild, if you do the math, 3% verse for your group if you are the only druid in your group. Is straight up something like, depends on how exactly much damage we're doing this season. It might be something like 600, 700k by existing. So let's say that you do 200k overall healer DPS. Your Mark of the Wild, you are actually doing 800k in the dungeon. It is insane how much that actually does. It might be something more like 500, 600k, but it's a lot. Just by you existing and pressing your group buff, you are providing a lot of value to your group. You do technically have a kick, although it is harder for you to use your kick because it is a charge into melee range and it shifts you into cat form, so you will interrupt your healing slightly. You have very good single target prio damage if you're able to do damage. The main issue with Resto Druid, of course, damage is that you have to choose to do damage or healing. Currently, the way it's played, you are playing Wildstalker. You are not playing Keeper of the Grove. And I actually cooked up a build last season. I was able to do 17s, although I admit that it was flawed, which was a Boomie weaving Keeper of the Grove Resto Druid tree. It was fun to play. I could technically heal while doing damage, which is awesome, but realistically speaking, it wasn't quite there. So, in terms of healing output, it is insane right now. It can do ridiculous levels of HPS by just spamming its buttons faster. You don't really need to prep that hard. We're talking basically like if you just double life bloom the right targets, you're in F-low, you have a few hots out, you'll be able to put out some ridiculous HPS. So it's not like it requires some of the prep that it used to, which is a little bit more complicated. There are a few interactions, but I think that this is a pretty friendly pug healer. If you just have a Resto Druid who's in human form, just going boop, 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 hots, healing, they'll be able to do relatively infinite healing. And I think that that is a big plus for the Resto Druid is I just want a healer in my plus 15 that isn't going to let me die. Like, I just want a healer. Like, I don't need to prevent one-shots as much as I need to just have healing all the time. It's a mobile healer. This one struggles to heal on high movement. Second boss Arakara, first boss Arakara, etc. This one can be healing in those high movement scenarios by just prepping accordingly. It might struggle a tiny bit, but it has a lot of options on the move. Very helpful. You have like the second boss of Dawnbreaker, which is going to kill a lot of pugs. First boss Arakara, second boss Dawnbreaker, second boss Arakara. These are going to end many, many pug groups because your healer is actually asked to put out very strong HPS. In particular, let's say first boss Arakara, and the second boss of Dawnbreaker. Even the first boss of Dawnbreaker now, actually. I saw a few deaths to PTR just from healer not being able to do healing. So I think that this is all important to consider. In terms of ease of access, this healer probably has these two have the easiest time. They also provide incredible group buffs. So Resto Druid is looking very pretty. If they nerf its output, it immediately drops down several tiers. So this is to be determined, okay? To be determined. Great questions. I'll answer them another time because, like I said, I'm direct clipping this. I don't know how long I've already been on for, but these are important points. If you're watching a meta tier list video, I imagine you're trying to learn about the state of the game so that you know what to invest in. I think that any class up here is a good thing to invest in, although I will admit Prez has these two healers in particular have a very bad community perception. So if you want to play a healer and you're like, well, look, I don't need to be the meta healer, but I just want to get invited. I don't want to be a holy priest. I don't want to be a holy paladin. Don't play this. Your options are basically Resto Shaman, Resto Druid, or Discipline Priest. And I'll say the same for tanks. If you want to just tank, you can technically play everything. But if you want to have an easy time getting invited to groups and have high community perception, play a Prot Warrior or a VDH. Brewmaster might be weird. There might be some weird Brewmasters who skew the community perception down, okay? If you ask questions, I won't be able to respond entirely because I'm just going to direct clip this to YouTube. But keep in mind that community perception is big. In terms of the actual perception list, these go down. These are the 3 healers that you can play, and these are the 2 tanks that you should play, okay? You will have a hard time pugging with these specs down here. That's why I'm making the list. Now, we move on. We finish the healers. We finish the tanks. Interesting, okay? Yeah, this is going to have a tough community perception. Bear is going to have a tough one. It's going to be very tanky, and I do think it'll live. Like, Bear will live better than... Bear will live here. No, Cambo. Prez Evoker does... You can actually casually have 2 million overalls, and you don't even need crazy gear to do it. It just does community perception on the actual details meters. Prez is going to do more damage than any healer by far on the details meters. Now, if you log it and you don't consider the actual... group spec, yeah, this is going to do more damage than anyone. It's awesome. It's very cool, and it's not that hard to do. Anyways, moving on. DPS, we're going to start down here, and we're going to go up here. The very first thing I'm actually going to put is needs more testing, okay? We're going to rank a spec first. Needs more testing. I have not seen this spec a single time on PTR, which is pretty surprising, because at this point on PTR, I've actually played with every single spec on this list, except one. I just haven't found it. I don't know where it is. I haven't played with a single outlaw rogue. Where are the rogues on PTR? I've played with a few rogues. Not going to lie, all of them are disappointing. That's a bit of a spoiler, but I haven't played with a single outlaw rogue. I do not know how to rate this spec. I have no idea the interactions with rogue. Rogue is one of the only specs that I myself have never actually played. I know that outlaw is target capped. Okay, I know that outlaw is target capped. I know that it has some fundamental issues, but the truth is that right now on live, if you have a good outlaw rogue, they will actually beat every one of your DPS. The main issue with outlaw rogue is actually pretty simple, which is not even the target capping of it. It's that it doesn't have a group buff. Atrophic poison barely counts as a group buff, okay? Atrophic poison barely counts as a group buff. It has fair utility, and it is fairly tanky. Outlaw in particular is very tanky, so I wouldn't be surprised if this was a very strong spec, but I don't know where to rate it because I haven't seen its damage at all. All of these overalls, by the way, I've linked so many of them in the actual Discord, where it's just under Season 3 class discussions. I've taken the overalls and just shown you. I'll be like, look, as a tank, this is what I did. As a tank here, I healed that tank. This is what they did. This is what this spec does. This is what this does. And you can just see. I'm like, this is a monk. He did this. He was bugged. This is a hunter. I have all those things in the Discord, okay, which anybody can find. And I'll keep doing that over the course of PTR so that instead of just taking my word for it, you could be like, oh, because, for example, in the very last key we did, there was an S tier spec in there, except for the fact that they did quite low damage. Yeah. So just saying. All right, just saying, they were the lowest DPS in that group. So just because you're a DPS player and an S tier spec doesn't mean you're actually going to do giga damn. You still have to play the game and play it well. Anyways, outlaw rogue, I actually don't know how to test this. Now let's just keep going with the other 2 rogue specs. Subtlety rogue. The spec is soup. Subtlety rogue is not good. I have played with 2 on the PTR, which technically doesn't give me a crazy amount of understanding about this spec. It's pretty hard to find subtlety rogues. The main thing about Subtlety Rogue is there's no reason to play it. You'll find that anything that's in the soup category, the problem with it is why would you play it? It has no niche. It doesn't have very high burst potential compared to other specs. Okay, subtlety spec. Yeah, subtlety rogue is a rogue. Indeed, subtlety is one of 3 rogue specs in World of Warcraft. Okay, it's one of 3 rogue specs in World of Warcraft. It doesn't have a lot going for it. It's not as tanky as the other ones. It has some burst potential, but comparatively to other specs, it's just not that good. It doesn't have anything that it brings aside from assassination or outlaw. Its damage profile, it's not like it has the most consistent damage, and it's not like it has the most bursty damage. It doesn't have the most funnel damage. It doesn't have the most prio damage. It doesn't have the most single target damage by far. It's just, you're playing a pure DPS spec. Rogue has 3 DPS specializations. There's no reason why you would play Subtlety unless you're bored. So Subtlety is soup because it doesn't provide anything to the group. Now, Assassination. I'm not 1,000% sure how to rate Assassination Rogue. Also, where is Assassination Rogue? Wait, do I not even have Assassination Rogue? Did they just forget that it existed? Yo, can anybody see Assassination Rogue on here? Why can't I see it? Oh, thank God. Sorry. My bad. You're right. Oh. All right. I'm a little tired. You're welcome. Thank you. With respect. Thank you. I don't know why. I didn't actually notice that. Okay. Assassination Rogue. Every Assassination Rogue that I have played, every single Assassination Rogue that I have played with is not great. I don't know if that is, I'm not going to read to it from here. I don't know if that is really the state of the spec. But Rogue lives or dies off of its ability to do damage. It does not have a group buff. It is not the tankiest melee spec that you can play. It is a melee spec. It has a good amount of group control, but not technically. You could be playing a DK instead of a Rogue, and there's a good argument of what DK can provide instead of Rogue. Rogue lives or dies off its damage. And I have not seen them do that much damage. Every single one of them that I've played with is doing subpar DPS. I want to rate one Rogue spec higher. Very realistically, it's Outlaw, probably, but I haven't played with an Outlaw. I have not been impressed with a single Assassination Rogue. Their single target is not the highest. Their AoE burst is not the highest. They're not as tanky as the other Rogue specs. What do they bring? Why would you play one? Well, we want Shroud. Okay, but you can also Invispod at that point. There are many other melee DPS specializations which I feel provide more. Their funnel damage is interesting to me, but I'm telling you that the overalls I have seen I have played with 7 or 8 Assassination Rogues. This is not a pool of 2. This one's a pool of 2, I will say. This one's a pool of 2. This one, it's possible they're playing poorly. It's possible they're not playing the right build. I don't know. Possibly this needs more testing, because I'm imagining one Rogue spec has to be pretty good. They're doing like millions DPS lower. So you can say, well, they have good prio. It's like, but if you're doing millions of DPS millions of DPS lower, then what's the point of playing it? You're actually like, this is the whole thing when they say, okay, you know how Arcane Mage is good funnel? You know how Arcane Mage does good prio damage? In an average Pug 15 key on live right now, your Arcane Mage is doing less damage to your funnel target than literally almost any other spec in the game because they've inted their rotation. Because Arcane Mage is apparently hard to play. And you doubt me. You're like, hold up, wait a second. No, Arcane Mage has the best single target funnel in the game. Bro, I did a 17 Priory on live just the other day on my prop pally. It was an alt key. I logged on to my prop pally. I was like, I'll just get the 17 real fast, right? I was kind of prepping him for this season because I like prop pally and he's fun to play. I had a mage on the very first pull. I was like, why is the guard captain living so long? I did the first pull of Priory and Suleiman was not dying. I was like, that's so weird. And I checked details. And my dude full sent his cooldowns into a footman. It's like, hold up, you're not doing good funnel prio damage if you're not even playing your spec correctly. So Assassination Rogue, it has an easier time than Arcane Mage, but at the same time, if you're doing millions of DPS lower, then you don't have good funnel damage. It doesn't matter if your profile fits that. If you're like way down here on the meters, then your rep pally is going to do more just hitting Divine Storm. So I don't think this is a very good spec right now. I'm pretty sure Outlaw is going to be the best rogue spec. I just need to test it. I haven't seen it yet. Okay, moving on. We're starting from the bottom, and then we're going up to the top, which means that the very next melee specialization that I will talk about is Warrior, okay? Warrior is next. Fury Warrior and Arms Warrior. I got to play with the second ranked warrior in the world. If you look at Raider.io right now and you go to the world ranked warriors, I got to play with the second ranked warrior in the world in an Arakara, as well as a few others. Would you like to know how many millions of DPS he was lower in that key than the second DPS in that key? I was shooketh. I was shooketh. He was quite a bit lower. If that is what one of the best warriors in the world can do in that particular... Now, maybe he could be testing a build. Maybe he could be testing something, very possibly. But I've seen many other Fury warriors. I did a 14 Priory at the start of this PTR week, this last one, and we timed it. I was on my bear, and we timed it, okay? We timed it. My Fury warrior had 6.95 mil overall, and I had two other DPS with 8.5 plus. So he was about 1.5 million lower. Not that low. To be honest, that's pretty decent because he's providing a warrior buff which buffed at least one of those specializations. So actually, that was fairly decent. That was like an alright thing in Priory. So he did alright, but still quite a bit lower. Fury warrior is not soup. No DPS warrior is in soup because they actually provide a group buff. And so even if they're doing 2 million DPS lower, if they provide 5% attack power, I actually think they are not the worst spec. If you were to tell me you can play with a Subtlety Rogue or a Fury Warrior, I would rather play with Fury Warrior. They at least provide a group buff. They're going to be not highest on the overall. They don't have a ton of utility, but they do still have a few things, right? You still have a few buttons that you can press, just like Rogue has some buttons. I'd say Fury Warrior is C tier. I don't think it's D tier. I don't think it's soup. I think it's C. The issue with Fury Warrior, one of the advantages of it, is that it has very consistent damage. So you know that in a lower key environment, Fury Warrior does a little bit better because it actually will be pretty good in terms of just having damage almost all the time. It is kind of cooldown dependent, but not as much as some other melee specializations. Great, that's Fury Warrior. Arms Warrior, for all the same logic, is uncapped. Every Arms Warrior I've played with is also pretty low, and I'm not going to lie, in terms of just pure numbers in a key, I really feel like Arms is... I got to put something in B tier. My problem is that B tier is like a solid spec, so maybe Arms is here right now. Arms is either C or B. It's like high C maybe. It's like high C. I have not been impressed with Warrior DPS. I feel like both of them could get... If both Warrior DPS got a 10% buff right now, you would actually be fine. Like, if they announced on the next tuning, they were like, Fury Warrior and Arms Warrior, all abilities buffed by 10%, neither of them would be up here. I'm telling you, they're that far behind. Actually, at this point, if they were that far behind, they would actually just be here like this. They would move up 1 or 2. They wouldn't even be here. 10% is a lot for DPS. That's how far these are behind. If a DPS is in C tier, it's actually just straight up 10. It's more than 10% behind these ones. That's how far they are. This has an entire outlier. One of the issues, right, is that this... On PTR right now, there are some specs that are doing 10 million DPS overall, and there are some specs that are doing 5 million DPS overall. So it's like, huh. And then I think about at least the single target or the damage profiles as we talk about each one. I'm not going to make it this like completely crazy for each DPS. I won't go into it too much. I personally don't really play DPS Warrior that much. But I do think, of course it could be a skill issue, but I've been playing PTR for like 7-8 hours a day, okay? So it's not about whether it's the highest in the world or the lowest in the world. I'm playing with the average. Now, granted, people on PTR are not quite average because a lot of them are actually quite good. You tend to find some pretty good players on PTR because who else would be testing PTR except for people who want to know and get an advantage, right? Okay, so I don't have the best sample size on PTR, but if you are watching this video, you're probably not a plus 20 title range key pusher. You're probably somebody who just wants to know, hey, look, I don't want to sit in Dornegal next season. I just want to play a spec that is good. I want to know how my spec feels. I want to know, am I going to have a hard time pugging? Do I need to start adding people to my friends list? Do I need to start, I was going to say some stuff that might get me banned, so I'm not going to say that. But basically, how much makeup do I need to put on, and what do I need to do in order to get into keys next season, etc., etc., etc. The truth is, don't wear makeup. Just wear fox ears. Trust me, this is a way better accessory than any makeup you could ever put on. Eyeshadow is cool. This is cooler. Trust me. Anyways, besides that. Okay, so both DPS warrior specializations are warrior DPS. If they were buffed by 10%, they would still be here. Next, in terms of these specializations, here we go. All right. Affliction Warlock goes into the C tier as well. Affliction Warlock goes into the C tier. Here's why. There are 3 Warlock specializations. All of them are Warlocks, and all of them provide damage to the group. Affliction Warlock provides currently the worst damage of all 3, and it has the worst type of damage of all 3. It has some strict requirements to play around Vile Taint. They gave Shadow double Shadow Crash, but they didn't give Affliction double Vile Taint. The way that Affliction deals damage is ramp based. So if there is a fish stick that spawns in the first pull of Gambit, Affliction cannot do a lot of damage to it because it cannot swap. It doesn't have swappable damage. This was a gigantic problem in Dragonflight when there was a lot of totems, like the last boss of Vortex Pinnacle. You had Brackenhide Hollow. You had a few things where ads needed to die, and man, was Affliction bad at that. Bromac in the Ultimon. There's a lot of situations like that. Now, this upcoming season doesn't have a ton of totems, which is good for Affliction and good for some specs that can't swap, okay? But, all right? But, here. So, Affliction of all 3 Warlock specializations could use a little bit of a quality of life increase. If they at least gave it 2 charges of Vile Taint, it would move it to maybe here. Its damage is not bad. The Affliction Warlocks that I've played with currently do more damage than a Warrior, but not enough, because a Warrior still provides that necessary group buff. You're playing a Brewmaster Monk, you're playing a Hunter, you're playing a this, you're going to want a Warrior. A Warrior will provide a lot of damage for free just by their group buff. So in terms of making comps and stuff like that, Affliction Warlock just doesn't have a place. It doesn't have a niche. It doesn't do the highest single target. It has pretty good AoE, but not like the best AoE. So here's my placing for Affliction. Next, of the 2 other Warlock specs, we have Destro. Destro actually goes into B. I've played with a few. Their numbers are decent. They have the idea of uncapped AoE, so they're going to be doing fairly well. I wouldn't be surprised, by the way, if after a little bit of tuning or when the season goes live, these 2 were swapped. I actually wouldn't be surprised, because although Destro is Destro, they live and die by tuning. If their AoE is like kind of nerfed a little bit, or they don't have the right numbers, then this actually is a ramp-based spec that does better in higher keys, but this could be down here. For your weekly 12, this is probably not a great spec. It's relatively simple and straightforward to play, but it does have some issues. There's a lot of mass AoE this season, and you still have the idea of Infernal and whatnot. So this is still a Warlock spec. It is one of 3 Warlock specs. It does have a relative niche in very powerful AoE cooldowns. Affliction also kind of has that, though. The way that it deals damage, this one's a little easier to play. I wouldn't be surprised if this one was a little bit... These tiers could be slightly swapped. But anyways, this is this. Now, Warlock players rejoice because there is a Warlock specialization that is doing pretty good damage. And when I say pretty good damage, I mean now we're starting to get into that 9-10 mil overall territory. Demo Warlock is currently pretty well tuned. A tier. This is actually a very strong DPS. Fairly hard to play, in my opinion. There's a little bit of nuance to how to do this rotation, but their single target is very good right now. Very strong single target, very strong AoE, consistent damage, which is big. This relies on cooldowns, that relies on cooldowns. This, very consistent damage. Yes, it's got cooldowns, but very, like, pack to pack, you can have quite good damage. And this is also a very fun Warlock spec to play, personally speaking. That's subjective, though. Objectively, in my testing, this will compete for top damage on some pulls, yeah? This will literally compete for top damage. And when I say, I mean, it will literally, like, on some bosses, depending on the type of boss, depending on whatever, you will actually see a demo Warlock be, like, #1 on details. That's pretty solid because, like I said, no group buff aside from Warlock stuff, which is still Warlock stuff. Gateways this season, I haven't seen I'm trying to think if I've seen any gateways in particular that are, like, super impactful. Not really, to be honest, in terms of Warlock utility, but Hellstones are nice. Warlock is good. Fairly tanky, good damage, etc., etc. I don't think it can be an S tier. It cannot be an S tier. It can be an A tier, though. Good specialization right now, okay? Cannot be an S tier because it does not provide a group buff and isn't, like, its damage would have to be 1,000,000 overall higher than other things, if not this. Okay, that's Warlock. On to the next one. We're going to go over to, let's rate the Evoker specs. This one's pretty easy. AUG is down here in C. It's okay. It actually, their tier set is pretty cool. It does a lot of damage. It's still AUG. I would be curious to know what would happen if you played AUG with the 2 S-tier DPS specializations in a very coordinated group. Probably not worth it. It's still AUG. Doesn't actually give the damaging group buff. Doesn't have anything that the group really needs. AUG has good CC. It's still AUG. Honestly, it's not soup, surprisingly. Like, I don't... Okay, actually, in high keys, it's C. In not high keys, it's soup. It's actually terrible. If you play this in an average pug where you don't know if your DPS are good or not, this is soup for sure. AUG is, still kind of dead. I'm kind of glad they can keep it like this. Nobody's complaining about this. Moving on to Dev. Dev is C tier. Honestly, I would almost put it B, but its damage is just... Okay, let me put it this way. The last Dev Evoker I played with, it was a Dawnbreaker. It was a Dawnbreaker key. We had a Dev Evoker, a Fury Warrior, and a Frost EK. Pretty sure, if I remember this correctly. The Frost EK had something like 7 million plus overall DPS, right? Not bad. 7 million plus, pretty good. My Dev Evoker had 4.7, and my Fury Warrior had... It was an Arms Warrior. It wasn't a Fury Warrior. It was an Arms Warrior. Had like 4.3. You see the difference? One of them is doing almost twice the damage of the other. So you have a DPS specialization, which is here, and a DPS specialization, which is here. If this one does not provide a group buff or something that you really want in your group, what are you bringing it for? Dev is actually pretty tanky, does provide Zephyr, which is a giant, any DPS that can provide a mass barrier type cooldown, pretty helpful. So Zephyr, Rescue, and the fact that a Flame Shaper Dev can provide Renewing Blaze on your tank or somebody, pretty helpful. So Dev has niche utility. I don't think it's the low C tier. I think it's high C tier, to be fair. I actually think the spec is okay, but the damage numbers have to be so high for this to be competitive. Overall damage has to be matching, if not slightly above, other specializations for it to be actually meta. That's the thing with Dev Evoker. You gotta understand if something like Dev or Aflock, if they don't provide a damaging group buff, their utility in high keys, it has to just do ridiculous damage. If you think about the last time that Destrolock was actually meta, it's because it was doing so much damage that no other spec compared. Okay, so those are the Evoker specs. Let's move on. We got to get through this list. I think I'm rambling just a little bit. We're going to save the best classes. We're going bottom to top. So bottom to top here, Ret Pally. The spec might be bugged. It's in C tier. The only reason I put it in B tier is because it's a very good pug specialization, but basically it's C tier. It's not, its damage is just not there right now. I've heard that it might be bugged. I myself have not played it, but I've seen many other people play it. Many people play it. Its damage is not there. It's not that good. It's just not that good, man. Like, I can't put it in S tier so you can screenshot it because it's just not there. The only saving grace for Rep Pally is the fact that Arakara is in the dungeon pool and Pally utility is so busted in that key that literally every Pally spec moves up a tier just for Arakara alone. But aside from Arakara, it's not there right now. Is it a fine specialization? Yes. But every single time I play with it, I'm like, dude, there was one guy who was complaining and he was like, oh, I'm doing the same damage as I do in season 2. I'm like, yeah, you are. Like, with respect, like the damage numbers are just not quite there, okay? It's not soup though. Rep Pally in a pug environment, both Rep Pally and Fury Warrior in my opinion, but particularly Rep Pally in a pug, this is one of the best pug specializations. I highly recommend that you caveat this position here. I'm going to put it up here. You caveat this position. If you are doing a 15 or a 12, you should invite a Rep Pally. They're one of the best specs for that. They have very good, consistent damage, and it's pretty hard for them to be very bad. You gotta understand that you want specs that cannot be very bad, because you can expect your average pug player to be very bad, and at least they'll have a bubble that they'll press after they get rezzed, after they die without pressing it. But at least they have it, right? Okay, moving on. Next spec that goes here, there's actually not too many more. I'm kind of saving the best ones for last. Most of the ones actually that are left are going to be up here, by the way. Most of the things are going to be up here. With respect, and you know, just so you know, that's not a rude thing to say. Do you know why that's not a rude thing to say? Because all of y'all are thinking of somebody right now and you're like, yeah, I was in a pug earlier and that person was terrible. Keep in mind, somebody's thinking that about you. We are all bad pug players occasionally. Everybody makes mistakes. It's okay. Don't flame them. I'm just saying that instead of flaming people, we've all been that guy, but somebody is thinking of you right now, just like you're thinking of somebody, okay? All right, moving on. Most of the specs are above here, so let's do our last C tier spec. There is one more spec that is in C tier right now. There's only one more, and I do caveat this one. I'm very curious. The first week that I played PTR in Ecodome Aldani, there was a single specialization. There was a single specialization that was bugged, and it was doing too much damage. They since fixed the bug, and I'm kind of curious because I've seen it a few times since. It is doing fair damage, but his group buff just got buffed to 8%. And there's something very interesting about Monk. I think it's either C tier, like high C tier, or if you need a monk buff, it is B or A. Because if you play right now, you're going to see a pattern here up in these top specs. There's going to be two comps that form. One of them involves Prot Warrior and a Resto Druid. You play Prot Warrior and Resto Druid or Resto Shaman. And here we go. Interestingly enough, there's going to be something. You'll have Warrior buff. You'll have a Resto Druid, both of which are physical damage. If you combine that with two other DPS specs, which we have not talked about yet, which are physical damage, you need a monk. Because I don't think that Mistweaver is powerful enough to be played up here. Like, I don't think you would play a Mistweaver over a Resto Druid. And you're going to want 8% physical damage is absolutely insane. That's an insane... They buff Mystic Touch. If you're playing a comp that is mostly phys damage, which are very few specs in the game, but do exist... Oh, you might actually play Windwalker. The Windwalker will be like the support spec, okay? 8% is wild for a spec like this. By that alone, this will go up and up, very potentially. But in my testing, I will say that Windwalker does not have the highest single target. It's okay, but it does not have the highest overall either. It is still a target cap spec. That is not the end of the world. It will feel very bad in the first area of Gambit, but actually Windwalker is surprisingly good at staying alive in a key. You've got Karma, you've got Fort Brew, you've got a bunch of options. You have a lot of really good buttons as defensives. You're pretty tanky, not the tankiest necessarily, not by far, but you're not exactly the squishiest DPS. You have pretty good damage, okay? So realistically, one of the reasons is because you have two comps that are forming right now. Realistically, you have a Fizz comp with a Brewmaster monk, and then Warrior Stonks go up a little bit. But in my testing, Windwalker is doing more damage than Warriors. I will say, Windwalker is doing more damage than Warriors right now. And you have a comp that might play Prot Warrior, and maybe you want a Mistweaver or a Windwalker. I could also, by the way, see a comp that uses none of these, but we'll talk about that in a second. Afterwards, I'll make a few predictions of what I think. Okay, let's keep going. Windwalker, very high C tier, honestly. Could be B tier, could be B. I'd be willing to put it in B. I've actually seen fairly decent damage from a Windwalker. It's target cap, so when I do big pulls as a tank, I have seen it. I have not played it myself, so I cannot tell you, oh, they were playing a weird talent. I've actually seen Windwalkers play both Shadowpan and I've seen them play both, right? I've seen them play both hero talent trees. I don't know which is best. It's possible I'm wrong about a few of these things in C tier, but let's keep going. Okay, Feral Druid, B tier, low B tier. Damage, not quite there, but is Druid. Feral Druid does not have damage to put it in A or S, but it is Druid. So if you need a Druid buff, it provides Druid buff. It is good enough. The damage is still kind of there for it to be B tier. I will say that if I put this in B tier, I feel like I should put this. The only thing is that Feral is not technically target capped, does have some fairly good profiles of damage in terms of it has a little bit of funnel through Apex Predator, etc., etc. No need to talk about this too much more than that, though. It also has an ability called Nature's Vigil, which is a bit of off-healing for your group. Very underrated, by the way. Very underrated that Feral Druid has Nature's Vigil. It actually can carry a lot of AoE pulls because you provide a ton of healing through that ability. It's kind of like the old Shadow Priest Vampiric Embrace. Like, it's fairly decent, okay? It's actually, like, it's really good. Just saying that this is, like, underrated piece of utility for Feral Druid is that, like, you go into the... Think about having a Feral Druid in the quad Paladin pull, the 5 Paladin pull, after the first boss in Priory. A Feral Druid Nature's Vigil well-timed can do a lot of healing on a pull like that. Or a Blood Warper pull in Floodgate, which does still exist, one of them. So, just saying, Feral Druid, fairly decent, pretty tanky, has bear form, survival instincts, free regrowths, etc., etc. Pretty tanky. Okay, moving on to the other specs. Pretty much everything here I'm looking... yes, this one. The worst of the mage specializations, but still a mage specialization. You can't rate mage any lower than B. It's impossible for mage to be any lower. I will say that borderline, I'd be willing to put Frost actually and needs more testing because I've only played with a single Frost mage and I'm not 1,000% certain about their damage output. So I would be willing to put it here, but I'm also pretty comfortable with a B tier because the other two mage specializations are better. So I'd be willing to keep it here. Mage is mage. Instead of talking about specifically Frost Mage, its damage is slightly lower than the other mage specs. That's why it's here. You will notice that none of the mage specs are here, because if you want a safe DPS to play every single season for the rest of your WoW career, you can just play Mage. Congratulations. Mage is Mage. Okay, moving on. In terms of the other mage specializations, Fire is interesting to me. I'm going to put it in A. I think that Fire is kind of back. Honestly, I've seen a few Fire Mages do very good damage. Has the same problem it had before. Same problem as Destrolock, which is just the higher the key level goes, the better you'll get at Fire Mage, because the longer that your main target lives, the more damage you do. But actually, Fire Mage, it's got everything, including a Cauterize. Cheat Death, very nice. Arcane Mage. Okay, hold up. Before we rate Arcane Mage, it might be the first specialization in S+. But I'm not gonna... Okay, we'll just send it, okay? We'll just send it at this point. Arcane Mage is the other mage specialization. It is either incredibly high A or S tier. It still does everything Arcane Mage does. It wasn't nerfed. It is still Arcane Mage. But this is a skill cap spec, okay? Here we go. Well... You're going to talk about the rest of... You're going to talk about Shaman buff in a second, because we can do Shaman next. Let me quickly rate Demon Hunter before I do Shaman, though, okay? Arcane is broken still. It's not going to get... Yeah, the thing is that it's mid in raid. Exactly. So in the patch notes today, you saw that Arcane Mage mostly got buffed, and you're like, why did Arcane Mage get buffed? It's because they tune around raid. They don't tune around M+. So its damage profile in M+ is insane. I will show you what this is going to look like in a second. I would say that Arcane is S+, to be honest. Very, very good. Very, very good. Okay? Boom. Next, Havoc. High A. High A right now. One of the best melee specializations and a way to get Chaos Brand. Havoc is very good right now. It was in the Priory that I did, and as well as a few other keys, the top overall details specialization. Actually, and that was without considering the group buff. It was just a straight up good spec. Does good funnel damage, does good single target, does good AoE at this point, and relatively tanky if you play it very well. You have to time abilities pretty well to play Havoc. The only problem with Havoc is that you cannot invite a Havoc to your weekly pug keys. Because if you do, they will die to at least 3 ground effects in that key. And if I'm wrong about this, link it to me. Show me a log from an average key where your Havoc does not die to the extractors in Motherlode, does not die to a Swirly in Floodgate, does not die to something that they're not supposed to get hit by. Let me ask you a question. Show me proof that you can play a Havoc, okay? You can play a Havoc without somehow dashing into the thing you're not supposed to dash into. I want proof. I want proof, okay? I just haven't seen it happen. I won't. This is a joke. Havoc is actually looking very strong. I think it's the strongest it's looked in a while because VDH has been so superior. You haven't played it a lot this season, but I'm just saying that Havoc is actually really strong right now and pretty good. So with respect, Havoc is awesome. Very good damage profile, very solid. Yeah. Havoc is actually, I think, sitting in a very good spot. And the other thing is that I really think there's a comp without VDH. I don't think this is the S+++ tank anymore. So there's a comp I will show you with Havoc that could do really well. Okay, next, we have a few specializations left. You will notice that there's a few interesting ones here and a few that you have seen before. Let's rank Shaman. Ellie. This is cap. This might be cap, by the way. Okay, listen. Killing Spree was removed, by the way, Drake. Sorry to respond to this. You won't see the comment, but basically Drake said it's the same as the Killing Spree in Outlaw Rogue. Actually changed. Outlaw Rogue no longer teleports you, so they shouldn't die to it as much anymore. Okay. Ellie Shami. I have a fundamental issue with this spec. Yes, it got nerfed today. It does pretty good overall, but it is a 3-minute class. They can play 2-minute Ascendants with PI, but realistically, Ellie Shami is squishy, and I don't think it is actually deserving of A tier. I think it's B tier. It provides Shaman buff. It is a Shaman with Cap Totem, Thunderstorm, 12-second range kick, and a Shaman buff. And it does very, very, very good burst AoE when you need it. But it does kind of poor damage outside of its cooldowns. It is relatively hard to play around. If at any point you have to move during your cooldowns, you can lose a ton of damage. So if for some reason you're like, I'm going to hit this big Ascendance right now, and you have to somehow int that window of cooldowns with anything that happens, you are not doing much damage. Your overall will suffer. Your single target is not the best at the moment. I don't think Ellie, the hype around it is you kind of have to play it. Single target's pretty bad. I would actually be willing, if it wasn't a Shaman, I would put it in low B or even C potentially. It's got good damage right now overall. The main problem is that it is squishy. It doesn't have a specific, like I think there are better specs, but it's a Shaman. You got on like some of like the thing here, right? It's a Shaman. It's the Cap Totem, the Thunderstorm, the Poison Cleansing Totem for Arakar, which is pretty helpful on some of those pulls. It is the fact that you have that, it's just a Shaman. You have Sky Fury. The Shaman buff alone you're going to want that somewhere. I think Resto Shaman's actually pretty good. It's nothing special though. So maybe you'll play Ellie with a caster comp. Maybe not. I don't know. I think, however, there's a different Shaman spec that is currently doing better. I think there's a different Shaman spec that's doing better, and that's Enhance. I'm tempted to put Enhance in S+, but I will actually put it in A, and I will tell you why. Enhance goes in A. It goes in higher A tier, yeah? It goes in higher A like this. Enhance is a good specialization. It is probably, right now, the best way to get a Sky Fury buff if you're not playing Resto Shaman. But it is squishy. It has very good burst damage. It has very fair single target. But I still think its squishiness. We played Enhance when it was super good, when Prot Pally was meta. And Prot Pally could help carry the Enhance. But I could see a comp where you play Enhance with something like a Dispriest who can just carry it. Dispriest, for example, right now carries Boomie a lot. Boomies can do a lot more damage because they don't have to bear form every mechanic with a Dispriest who just shields them. It was Teddles who said recently that he did a Priory without a Dispriest, walked in and died to the first pull. He was like, so weird. This AoE went off, and then I got pot shot, and I didn't even know I could die to that. I'm like, that's what every pug dies to ever. That's the thing that kills you. Everybody knows the first pull of Priory, you can get pot shot on top of any of the Thunderclap or the Disrupting Shout if you take a Knight with you. Everybody knows that. But if you're playing with an Oracle Dispriest, they just go boop, and you don't die. So I'm just saying, without the Aug and the Prot Pally, enhances. Even if its damage is very competitive and you want Shaman buff, I see a world where you drop it because it's not worth bringing, but it's still a Shaman and it still does very good damage. The damage of these two, if you had to tell me, would you rather have an Enhance or an Ellie for damage profile? I'd take Enhance. Okay. We only have a few specializations left. We're making our way through. Here we go. Boomie. Fuck this spec. With respect. With respect. Fuck. Why? Come on, man. Come on, man. With respect. I just listen. I'm allowed one or two of those in the video. Okay? I'm allowed one or two of those. That's the only time. I just want the meta to change. I just want there to be something different. I dream of a world out there on the horizon when we don't play the same specializations that we have played for the last 25 seasons of M+. Because of the way this spec is designed, it is very good for M+. But I don't like healing them because I'm not an Oracle Dispriest. Because I'm not an Oracle Dispriest. I don't like healing them. As a tank player, I don't like tanking with them. I don't like playing with them. They are starfalling and dotting when I'm walking through a pack. They are not bear forming the one very obvious AoE mechanic. They are not using any of their utility. And yet they're still an S+. Because they currently have the best funnel in all of M+. The only thing that I have going for Boomie right now is that most likely their tier set for Keeper of the Grove gets nerfed. And I have a special bone to pick with them because Guardian Druid was nerfed specifically because Boomie exists in Raid. Elune's Chosen was nerfed, and therefore Guardian was nerfed. They didn't revert the nerf for Guardian. They just put it in for Boomie, Elune's Chosen, and left it in for Guardian. This is the third time that's happened. I don't know if there's no Guardian Druid developer, but whenever they change something for Boomie, Elune's Chosen, they also end up nerfing Guardian. I don't like this spec. I don't think anybody really likes playing with a Boomie, with respect. I actually don't think that anyone likes playing with a Boomkin, but they are currently undeniably S+ tier. Their overall might actually be a little bit low, but they are a Druid, they provide Mark of the Wild, and they actually have amazing single target burst potential with their Dryad's Favor Keeper of the Grove tier set. That might get nerfed. If that gets nerfed, Boomie drops down one or two tiers. They can technically live the highest end one. They are actually amazingly tanky when played well and have the highest potential to live with bear form. They will live more than any other spec one-shot things like Zav in Theater of Pain, etc., etc. Quite good. You will want them. They have Poison Dispel as well. They might not press it because they're a Boomie, but they have Poison Dispel in Arcara, and also Curse Dispel in Dawnbreaker. Curse Dispel, by the way, relatively mandatory in Dawnbreaker now. You will want one Curse Dispel. You will struggle if you don't have a Curse Dispel in Dawnbreaker, at least one. Not quite as bad as Grim Batol, but still, you will struggle. So you are going to want a Curse to spell that has to come from somewhere. Okay? Yeah, you bring Mage or Boomie or both, but that's fine. Okay, rest of the specs. Let's go. Let's rate DK. This needs more testing because it got buffed today. I have no idea how this currently plays. I have played with a few on PTR. They were adequate, but I don't know how they are doing right now. They got massively buffed today on the PTR notes, and I haven't seen one. I need to see Unholy more because I don't know how to rate it after the buffs today. Let's go with the other DK spec. Frost DK, S+ tier. Frost DK is S+. Frost DK is amazing. The changes they made to it, I know the Greater Frost community was not so happy with the initial change to Breath, and then it was like they were really happy with the first version, which was empowered, and then they were not happy with the next version, which wasn't, and then this, and then that, and then this. Dude, Frost DK has gotten more patch notes in the last 3 weeks than a Fury Warrior has gotten in the last 3 years. Frost DK has gotten more. And look how many blue posts have been about Frost DK, okay? Look how many Frost DK. Look how much it's gone. Look at there's like this much every single WoW tuning. There's like DK, and it's just Frost DK changes, Frost DK changes, Frost DK changes. Oh, they're not having more Frost DK changes. Fury Warrior is like not even mentioned. I think Fury Warrior got nerfed in the last build. What the discrepancy between Blizzard's favorite classes and not are wildly on display with this S+ tier list, okay? Frost DK is very good right now. The only thing I will say about Frost DK is that I have noticed one thing. Actually, all 3 of these specs right here have an interesting dilemma to them. This one is the least amount. These 2 are very skill capped. Right now on live, Boomie should be, relatively speaking, top overall. They do a lot of damage, but they're skill capped. They shouldn't be because it's pretty straightforward to play. All 3 of the specs in here right now they will sometimes do very little damage. I have seen a few Frost DKs with several million DPS less than other Frost DKs. I don't know if they're trying new builds. I don't know if it's changed. But a lot of Frost DKs here, I don't know exactly how skill capped it is because this is one of the few specializations that I have never actually played in World of Warcraft. So I know they're very good right now. I've played with it enough to know that they're just significantly very good. But they're DK. They don't have an offensive group buff, but they're DK. They have grips for what it's worth. There are a few really good instances of this, Priory, etc., Arakara even, where you want a DK, they're very tanky, they're DK, their damage is insane. Okay, you're probably wondering the last few specs here, okay? Right, the meta will not be the same because instead of Unholy, you have Frost. Because Frost is, by the way, Frost is doing so bad on live right now. Frost is basically unplayable. I can't believe you would play Frost DK on current live. Season 2 Frost DK really needed help. That is unbelievable cap. You just haven't seen a good Frost DK. I happen to know a good Frost DK. I happen to know 2 good Frost DKs, and they are undeniably the top DPS in every single run that I've ever played with them. They are unbelievably good right now. They just were overshadowed by Unholy. Frost DK is in a great place right now. They are also in a great place next season. Good time to be a Frost DK. Okay, Frost DK stonks up. I don't mind this one because Frost DK was neglected like fucking Harry Potter under the staircase for so long that I'm okay with them having their time to shine. You know what I'm not okay with? Boomie and Arcane Mage. Fucking rip these 2. A Mage does not deserve. Mage needs a season off. God, put Mage lower for once. Put this lower for once. But Frost DK, actually, you know what? Fair enough. Y'all were neglected for like a long time. Okay, cool. We have 4 specs left. Let's rank. I'm going to do Hunter last. So, Shadow Priest. Shadow Priest. Shadow Priest. Shadow Priest. Is S+ tier. This spec does insane single target damage right now. Okay? Insane single target damage. Absolutely amazing single target damage. It's overall also pretty good. But one of the reasons that this is so good is because of how it does damage. Okay? This is an amazing specialization on PTR, not on live. On live, it sucks. It's on live right now, it's terrible, but on PTR, it is amazing. You will actually see incredible overall DPS from a Shadow Priest, including single target. They will hit very high single target. It got nerfed originally, like early on in PTR, right at the start of Ecodome testing, and it was not enough. I do think this might get nerfed again because it is very good in Raid, which is a red flag. You don't want your Mythic Plus spec to be good in Raid. It's probably getting nerfed again. I think Shadow Priest is very good. Problems with Shadow Priest, it's actually fairly tanky if used correctly. You have to actively use DR, but you have pretty consistent DR through Fade, your Flash Shield DR, etc., etc. You have Vampiric Embrace, which is fairly good group utility in terms of AoE healing on a complicated, tough pull, but you don't have much else. You have PI, and you have Fort. Aside from that, you have a very long interrupt, and you don't have a ton of AoE CC. They did give you double Shadow Crash, so you're a little bit more flexible in how you do damage. But your damage is through Psychic Link, which was buffed again. I think Psychic Link is the most changed ability in World of Warcraft at this point. Okay? Pretty fluid spec. You actually play Dark Ascension now instead of the other one. A lot of these specs, one of the reasons this is good is because you have more 1 minute cooldowns instead of 2 minute burst. So pretty solid. I think Shadow Priest definitely deserves its time here. You'll see 3 DPS, 4 DPS at this point, 2 healers, 3 tanks. Not bad. My only problem is that when I finish this tier list, I will show you a problem with this and what's happening with PTR at the moment. Okay, 3 Hunter specs. Survival Hunter. Where do you think Survival Hunter is on this tier list? Give me your best bet. We have 3 right here. Soup. What does soup mean as I wait for you to tell me? What is soup? Soup is bad. Soup sucks. Nobody likes soup. Soup is like the worst possible tier. I didn't want to copy directly because I remember one tier, Max was like, this is swamp ass. I was just like, you know what swamp ass is? Soup. They're like the same thing. Yeah, Survival Hunter is actually pretty good right now. It's an A tier. Survival Hunter actually very, very solid. Very solid spec. It is overshadowed by other things, so it's low A tier. The main issue with Survival Hunter is that even though it pumps, so do other things. And what does it bring? It provides Hunter's Mark, which is a joke. So it's good. It's relatively tanky, actually, quite tanky. It does do pretty decent single target, very good AoE. But the only problem with it is that it is overshadowed by other things. So I could understand this would be B. Yeah, Survival Hunter is very tanky. Oh, it's much tank. I would say Survival Hunter is tankier than Warlock. Warlock has Dark Pact and Unending Resolved, as well as their 1 minute Hellstone, which applies Soul Burn. You can Soul Burn it for max health. But otherwise, then they have passive Fell Armor and a little bit of extra stam. But they've been nerfed a lot. Survival Hunter has 2 charges Survival of the Fittest. Does Survival still have Fortitude of the Bear? They have Turtle. They have pretty passive, also a few percent DR from this source, from that source. Survival Hunter is fairly tanky. You have a lot of ways to live mechanics, actually. Feign Death is good for Aura. Feign Death is also good for a lot of mechanics in Priory. There's a lot of things that Hunter can do. You just have to actively be tanky instead of passively be tanky. Like, one reason Warlock is tanky is because they always have a small shield on them for like 10% of their health. Etc., etc. Whereas Hunter, if you don't press a button in advance, you will die. But technically, Hunter is actually quite tanky. It's not quite as tanky as Mage, but it's pretty decent, actually. You'd be surprised. Hunter is not... None of the Hunter specs are squishy. It's just an old reputation they used to have. They've been changed a lot, but all Hunter specializations are quite tanky, actually. Like, all of them are. You just need to be proactive with your tankiness, okay? Anyways, Survival, pretty decent right now, okay? You have 2 Hunter specs left. This may shock you. This may shock you. Both of them are very good right now. Hunter is in a very good spot. All 3 specs of Hunter are incredibly good on PTR. They do massive, massive damage. Okay? I don't think they're AA. I think... Marksman is the one thing I'm confused about. Beastmaster is S+. Beastmaster is like... Giga S+ right now. Like, Beastmaster is... I'm going to explain why. Okay, let me explain why. Beastmaster is, I think, and I dare say this because I don't want it to get nerfed. I think it might be good for the game to have a spec like this. It's like the best DPS in the game, borderline, right now, give or take. And let me explain why I think this, because I have to caveat it. It's not that much better than a very good Mage or a very good Boomie or a very good Frosty K or a very good Shadow Priest. It's not that it does that much more, because also remember, no group buff. So if this and a Boomie are equal, the Boomie does way more damage. Here's the problem with BM. Here's the good thing about BM, rather. Its damage is so consistent. This is the best pug specialization of all time. This and Rep Pally are the two best pug specializations. Like this one right here, if it's tuned this highly, which is just a tuning thing, they might nerf it a little bit, but even a 5% nerf would be fine. Even a 5% nerf, the spec would still be very good. It actually is fairly tanky, has a lot of buttons. You got Fortitude of the Bear, double SI, double Survival Instincts, Turtle, Feign Death, etc. But it just does a lot of damage. It does so much damage, man. It does a lot of damage, and its damage is consistent, and it can be done while moving. Marksman has to plant and cast, and if they have to int their cooldown rotation, they will do less damage. There is no circumstance where you have to stop casting. You're like, okay, movement mechanic, gotta dodge, no problem. I'm doing my full rotation. This does not require any setup, does not require any sort of planting or pre-planning casts. This does, however. Marksman does. Marksman does a lot of damage, so I'm going to put it at the bottom of S. The issue is that it's a marksman hunter, and its niche is slightly overshadowed, although it does a lot of damage, and it deserves to be here. There's a world where you wouldn't play this in favor of this, because its niche is that its single target is a little low. It's overall very, but it's burst. But have you seen Beastmaster burst? Like, I don't think this burst is that much higher than this. The main advantage is that this bursts harder on a single prio target, whereas this is rarely just kind of pad AoE. Like, this does a big burst. This will do 40 mil on a first pull of Gambit. This does 40 mil, but this will do technically more damage to, let's say you pull the Giant in the first pull of Gambit. This will do more pull to the Giant, or the Shrednator in Floodgate, etc., etc. The Guard Captain in the first pull of Priory, etc. So I see the niche of this. The main issue is just convenience. This is harder to play perfectly. This is easy to play perfectly. This is literally 4 buttons. I'm okay with a DPS specialization being very good that is good for the game. Because I think about it like this. In a very high key, people are probably going to be upset. When I finish this tier list, I'm also going to give you a few comp predictions, okay? So if you take the best players and they play these specs, I think this is the S plus tier category. And what's interesting is there are automatically 3 specs that you can see 3 different comps forming. That would be amazing. Currently this season, there are 2. There are 2 different specs, okay? So Marksman Burst can be f***ed up by either the tank moving out of volley, or even if you just int a button. Like, let's say you have to dodge a mechanic and you panic and you accidentally send that aim shot without trick shots up, like, you've done a lot less damage. There's a little bit of a nuance, and you can easily mess this up. You can't really mess this up. This is good in every scenario, okay? This is good in every scenario. But let me tell you something. When we talk about physical comps, which spec up here does the most physical damage? There's a single answer to this question. Which DPS specialization in the S plus tier does the most physical damage? Correct. Which is how much damage? People will think Marksman. Marksman is a lot of magic damage. Both of their hero talents are Arcane and Shadow. This is magic damage. Now, granted, most of their base kit, I think 70% of their overall damage, 70, 80%, like quite a bit of their damage is still physical, so they'll benefit from a monk buff. But this right now, where most of its damage comes from bleeds and stampedes, are both physical. This is like 100% phys. So 8% for a Beastmaster Hunter is more than 8% for a Marksman Hunter, right? Yes. So if it is explosive shot is fire damage, I don't think it might even be I know aim shot is physical damage, rapid fire is, volley is considered physical damage, so trick shots would be, you know what I mean? But I would say I think about 70% of their damage. I wouldn't be surprised if it was something like that was fizz. I'm not exactly sure on that statistic, but you got to understand, even Frosty K, most of its damage is magic. So we have 2 potential comps that I can see right here. Okay, 2 comps. I will put them in the Discord. Find them in the Discord if you want. The Discord hasn't been linked this whole time. There. I'm going to make meta comp predictions. I don't want to make an ass out of myself. I'm not going to lie. Thank you for sticking around. I don't know how long this video will actually be. All of this is going on YouTube. Me talking about every single one of these is all going on YouTube. This is my first attempt at going over an actual tier list for a season. I've been playing WoW for a very long time. I am not the best WoW player. I am not a record 100% rank 1 crazy 21 key level title pusher that to that level. But I've played this game for a very long time and I love World of Warcraft. All I want out of this is, at the very least, I want there to be a change up, because I don't like being bored. I don't like being bored in World of Warcraft, and I especially don't like wanting to play a spec and sit in Dornegal and not be able to play it. There is a world where, based on this information, even if I really liked Blood DK, if I also like a different tank that is higher up, I will play a different tank. If I love my Guardian Druid, but it just it got nerfed today, and on top of everything, and I'm just like, man, I really wish I could play it. There's a world where I play it. And there's also a world where I say, you know, next season, I do want to push a little bit higher. I'm going to consider swapping to Warrior. The reason that this matters is not whether it's playable. A very good subtlety rogue will attempt to do more damage than a Beastmaster Hunter and fail. Probably. But a very good subtlety rogue can probably out DPS some of the specs up here. And a bad arcane mage. You still take the player over the class in every scenario, except maybe not an Evoker, okay? But the point is, right? I chat about the comps being, I'm going to make a comp right now. I'll make it. That's a good question. I'll have to make it. There's the Season 3 class discussion and talent builds and stuff, but I'm kind of curious. I will make it basically right now. Here, meta channel, meta comp prediction. I want to hear what